Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible, one brave word at a time. Here today to help me with that mission are some of the amazing authors of a new book that we have coming out called The Ancestors Within. Recognize and embrace the gifts of your origins. This is the third book in a series by lead author Amy Gillespie Doherty. And before I introduce these lovely ladies to you today, let me just say a humongous thank you to Amy. Amy, we would not be here without you. You have brought together not only a stellar author cast for this book, but for all of your books and really the entire community that you've created. It's just incredibly powerful. And I'm so honored to be here guiding this journey with you and this amazing community. So thank you, Amy. And ladies, welcome. How are you doing today?
Great.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to have all of you. So listeners, I have Dottie Lamoureux. She's a teacher, healer, coach, and Akashic record reader who helps you reach new dimensions of healing. I've got Star Studanovic, and her focus is a specialty of Reiki, along with restorative yoga, accompanied by utilization of crystals and essential oils. Her other love is calligraphy, and ancestor messages are available. You guys are going to see that in her chapter. Katie Sutton is an intuitive channel, vibrational healer, and founder of Zen Within Academy, who supports clients on their personal path to wholeness and fulfillment as their most authentic selves. And I have Shelley Regal-Young. She's the owner of Lone Raven Art, where she fosters inner balance through sacred creativity and energy healing. Ooh, we've got some power in this Zoom room today. Okay, so Dottie, you're going to start this party off. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thank you, Laura. I'd be happy to. My chapter is 16, and it's called Moon Messages, Embracing the Mystery of Your Human Experience. And it's really about my evolution with my intuition and learning how to trust my intuition. And I weave in the moon and the Akashic records, which are two of my most favorite ways to connect to my intuition. And I also talk about how hard it's been to be a human for me so far, until I learned how to connect to divinity. And so that's really what my chapter is about.
So can you tell me a little bit more about the moon aspect of this? I was just reading a chapter about astrology and another author who was into those pieces. And I kind of just want to know how you got started in that. Do you have a story about that?
Yes, I've always loved the moon. I think, like everybody, seeing her in the sky has touched me in a place that it's hard to describe, honestly. And so she really started to give me messages once I started to connect to the Akashic records, and I started to open her Akashic records, the moon's Akashic records, and that connected me in a whole different way. And the moon, because it is representative of our emotional climate, because of my astrology, I'm really into learning about how my emotions are influenced by outside factors and how I can work with those energies and those forces to find a little bit more balance and equilibrium when it's possible.
Okay, so tell me this. This is what I was thinking about yesterday after I was reading about it. Do you check to see the state of the moon before you actually make a decision or do something that day? Like, are you into it to the point where you're looking for that first before you make a decision?
No, I just am aware of what sign she's in and how that might influence my mood. And it's not every time the moon is in Scorpio, this happens. It's just like, it informs, again, my emotional climate. If I feel spacey or can't make a decision, it's usually the moon is in Gemini. Of course, not always, but that's how I use it. And I also use the new moon and full moon as a way to set intentions and also release and forgive each month.
Yes, perfect. That's the other piece that I was reading a lot about, is just the release kinds of rituals and ceremonies that you can do, calling in things, releasing things, depending on what the moon is. And of course, I read a lot about charging your crystals into the light of the full moon, which I love. And thank you, because I try to remember that our listeners are beginners in some of these topics. They're just hearing about these beautiful tools that you are all offering, and they're all tools of awareness. And if it can give people a perspective, and a different kind of perspective, especially like you said, Dottie, the on your own emotions, just allowing you to pause for a moment and go, oh, okay, well, here's some other information that could help me right now in the middle of my whatever the emotional thing is. Anything else you wanted to say about that?
I really could go on and on about the power of using the new and full moons for ritual, especially forgiveness. I will say for myself quickly, in 2021, I used the full moon to forgive myself for a lot of things, which took me a long time to realize I even needed to do. And that really has shifted a lot of my energy. It shifted a lot of the blame and shame stuff that goes on in my heart and my head. And it's just been really powerful. So if anybody's curious, I highly recommend exploring that and playing with that.
Yes, very powerful. Thank you, Dottie.
Thank you.
Okay, Star, you are next up. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
My chapter is about connection with Annika, who is an ancient scribe who worked on the Book of Kells. If you don't know what the Book of Kells is, it's one of the most ancient pieces of calligraphy ever done that still survives, about 800 AD. And she first made her appearance in my life when I was in the first grade. And what I have found, based on the moon, is the feminine and the emotion connects me with my ancestors, especially her. I had found myself, before I connected with her, writing by candlelight, drawing, doing something, moving my desk by the full moon, especially. My connection with her was in the first grade when I picked up a pencil and learned how to write letters. And that's the first time I heard her voice. And it was Gaelic, it was accented. I had no idea where this voice was coming from, but I was holding a pencil. I was learning to write, and that was our connection. And it became a part of ritual. It became part of using your breath. It was a dance with pen. It was yoga with pen. And it's still my passion to this day. It ebbs and flows just like the phases of the moon, but it's always there. I realize. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just smiling because I'm realizing I need to really dive into the next level of your chapter and understand this particular guide. The question I have for you is, you heard that voice so early in your life. Do you remember being able to tell anyone about it, or what went on with that?
Absolutely. I was so fortunate. My dad was a shaman. So there was a connection with ancestry work because I was raised in that. My uncle was Celtic. So there was that ritual aspect of my entire life. So there wasn't that barrier and that fear of being able to talk about it. He died when I was 12, and that's when the candle flame went out for many years, because I didn't have that connection. Until I found my group of people. I found people like you, that we do have that connection with our ancestors. We do have that connection with the earth, with every living thing. And there is a web and there is a connection. You just have to find it.
I get so excited about what you are all offering, and I mean, as authors, but then beyond that too, ways to connect. So the one other question I have for you, Star, is, let's say you don't know any of that. Let's say you don't know those connections to the ancestors. They're there. So of course you all are offering ways to connect, whether you know or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how would we know to connect with, can you repeat the name of your gal again?
You're already connected. You have DNA, you have their blood. You are the sum total of who they are. So that lineage goes all the way back to the beginning. All you need to do is ask. And it's something so simple, we don't think about it. When you need something, what do? You ask for it. And if you ask, it's freely given. What they want to do is help you make this life maybe a little bit easier than it was for them. Annika's thrilled with calligraphy pens. We used quills and dip pens way back when, and that's how I learned calligraphy, was with a quill. Believe me, it's much easier with a cartridge pen.
Annika, that's the name. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Star. Gosh, I love talking to all of you so much about this. And thanks to all of you for what you brought to the book in terms of your vulnerable, amazing stories, but also master tools. You are all master teachers, and I'm excited for the world to get a hold of these books. They're toolkits of possibility. And so I know that the people watching are going to be a little spark is going to be ignited by some of the things you're sharing today. Katie, you're up next. Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Thanks, Laura. I am Katie Sutton. My chapter is chapter 6, and it's called Activating the Healer Within, How to Harness the Power and Wisdom of Your Inner Child. And my story and my journey has been about stepping into the truth of who I am as an intuitive and a channel. And through that process, it really looked like me reconnecting to my inner child. My belief is that when we are connected to our roots, i.e. our inner child, we are connected more deeply to our ancestors and to source and to all of our gifts. They are the light within us that shines through. And a lot of the work that I do with clients is focused on clearing trauma. But a couple of years ago, when I was connecting with my inner child, she asked me the question, why do you talk to me like I'm broken? And I realized, oh, yes, there is an aspect of our inner child self who is pure and connected and healing to us. And she has been my greatest teacher whenever I am disconnected or feeling lost. It's that connection with her that brings me back on track. And I know that if I'm listening to my inner child self and hearing her voice and being in that state of play and connection with her, then my heart will be open and I can manifest the things that I need to manifest on my path. And so in my chapter, I also share a tool about how to connect with that healed part, which is, I think, a beginning place. And then you can go into doing the work in tandem with that inner child to heal the trauma that we all have experienced as children. We've all been through things. I don't think I've ever met a person that doesn't have inner child trauma to some degree. And so that's kind of the path that I take in my healing work with others and with myself.
Oh my gosh, I don't know about the rest of you, but did you have to pause on why are you talking to me like I'm broken? Holy moly, that statement just might make you change the trajectory of how you're connecting, right? And just to kind of honor that little girl or little boy a little bit more. Tell me more about that piece of it. I mean, for people who, all the connection for some people is a broken one. That's how they go into the connection. Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah, well, I want to add to that too, that statement of why are you connecting to me like I'm broken actually first came through when I was working with my ancestors. And so they said the same thing to me. And so when that statement came in, I thought, oh my God, I've done it again. Right? I'm so focused on the healing and the clearing that I've done it again. And so just like when I do ancestral work, I want to reconnect people to the truth of their gifts, right? And so to me, when you're working with your inner child and trying to connect with that healed part or that whole part, It's about honoring their wishes. So the exercise that I always give people when I first bring that connection online, because generally when I work with people, the inner child is outside of their field, right? It's kind of outside of themselves and it feels like this secondary person that you're connecting with, is to check in every morning and say, hey, what do you want to do today? Right? And sometimes my inner child wants ice cream for breakfast and I can't always do that. But 9 times out of 10, she says, hey, this is the necklace. Like, she picked out my outfit today. Like, I honor what she wants to bring to the table because that's the light that people connect with through me. And that's how I want to connect with people. I want to be in that state of love and play and connection. And so I try to do my best to listen to her. Now, certainly 3D tasks get in the way sometimes, and we have to compromise and negotiate just like you do with a little child. But really, it's in the essence of asking the question, listening, and then doing your best to honor the request that comes through. And in the activation that I give, I kind of give you all journal prompts and things like that so that you can start to make that connection, because it can be a little elusive and it can take a little bit of time. Sometimes they're really shy and they're not trusting, and we have to make space for that too.
Go figure that they would be
Yeah.
a little bit not trusting, right? Yeah. Oh my goodness, I love that. I love what you're sharing, and again, just helping people understand the different kinds of ways it's possible to connect is really can be life changing. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Shelley, how about you? Tell us about your amazing chapter.
Hi, my chapter is chapter 15, Heeding the Call, A Beginner's Guide to Embracing Your Gifts. And I wrote this chapter because I am a beginner at embracing the gifts that I have. I started back into a creative and spiritual journey about 4 years ago, following the dissolution of my marriage and being laid off of my career, both of which were almost 20 years of my life. So, I basically used it as an opportunity to reconnect to who I was before adulthood and responsibilities, kind of took away from what my soul was wanting to do. And that's just what my chapter's written on is going back into who I was, what lit me up, and just trying to be open and following the call.
So I think that particular theme of rediscovering what lights you up is, I mean, everyone would nod to that. Like we get back around to it as an adult, it seems, but it's not always easy when you've lived an entire lifetime being taught that you should follow the shoulds and the supposed tos. Do you remember waking up to it? Do you remember a moment there? What else do you want to share about that?
So, it was a process. It was, really just, I listened to a psychic that had, just a little blip, an hour each week or something like that on the radio between songs, and ended up calling into her one day and saying, I got laid off. I'm being pulled back into the artistic direction. Or, do I follow the artistic direction and go, rediscover that? Or do I go back into the engineering field that I was in and try to find a job? And that, kind of eased open the door. And then I took a trip to visit Antelope Canyon in Page, Arizona. The one thing that was on my bucket list, it was based on a painting that I had painted in high school that's still on the wall of my high school. And on that trip, I'm like, please, I want to find the inspiration. So when I get back home, I know what I want to do. And it was on the return trip home, about 6 days in, driving through Salt Lake City, when I was hit with the name of my business, what it was going to do, what it was going to be. And it doesn't, it wasn't what it is now, because it's been a work in progress, developing and just listening to, okay, what's next? Because each step has been kind of blind.
Yeah, you've had the notion and the courage to ask, and somebody was talking about that a few minutes ago. You have to ask, you have to initiate the question. But I wonder if you also would agree that sometimes you have to make your demands. Like, I want to know this now, you guys, come on, but I think I didn't learn about asking until much later in my life, and making that a practice is pretty powerful. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not always easy, especially when we're conditioned in our society that we don't ask for things, right?
Right.
Because that's selfish, or it's too demanding, whatever that is.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us just a little bit more about the tool you're sharing.
So the tool is basically taking the reader through the process that I went through, condensing it because, again, my process was over a period of years, but, setting the intention, sitting down, being quiet, and just remembering before all of the responsibilities took you away from what you really enjoyed. Remember what that is. Write it down. Write down, do you realize, or, a turning point from when you stopped doing the things that lit you up and started doing the things that you had to do because that's, you had to pay bills or you had to take care of your family. And meditate with the intention of connecting to your ancestor or connecting to what that calling is. And then the final step is just being open. Be open to the call. Be open to the nudges and turn towards them.
My goodness. I think that everyone is going to realize that if they're open, I'm hanging on that, what you just said about being open, that really has to be a first stage. There's a level of awareness that has to be present. You have to be willing to hear and maybe not judge so harshly, and just be kind of open to the possibility. That's why I'm constantly talking about, what else is possible. I love, love, love that question. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you to all of you again. You're teaching people all day long about these kinds of things, but it's quite another thing to be able to write that in words in a book and make the experience a practical, awesome one for the reader. And you all did that so brilliantly. And I'm just so grateful to all of you for being such badasses. I've got this next question for all of you, and Star, I'm going to start with you for this one. When you learned about ancestral healing, whenever you learned about this big topic, that it was possible to connect with your ancestors and work through modalities that help you heal the things that are going on in your life now that you really want to change. This is a big topic, right? So I wondered if you would share one of your aha moments when you realized just what was possible with this. I know you guys all probably have a million moments, but what was one of them? What's the one that comes to you when I ask that?
One of them is realizing she was in 800 AD, but can still give me pertinent advice for what I'm doing today. It isn't so much the exact thing that the person does, it's how they do it and what tools they use and what their mental state was when they did it. That connection is part of your heredity. So if you're a computer programmer, you're not going to find someone from centuries ago who did that, but you will find someone who had the same skills that you used to do your job. Annika used a quill and a dip pen. I'm using a cartridge calligraphy pen, which is much less messy, trust me. But her ideas of spacing, how are you going to put that on the page? How are you going to illustrate that? What is it going to look like as a final product? And I get a mental snapshot of what that can be. So a lot of that is teaching you to visualize what can be. So you're actually bringing your ancestor into you and letting her blood flow through you, her ideas, her skills, but it's still you.
Great point about the technology.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great point about the technology. I hadn't really thought about that in terms of like computers. I mean, even some of us can think back to a very short time ago when we didn't have the amount of technology we have now. But it's not that, it's the skills. Right? Yeah.
It's all about the skill.
Yes.
And can you imagine the skills we all have in our ancestry?
Yeah, that's what's so beautiful about this particular book. This book is the third book in the series, and it's really about the gifts that were passed along down the line to you. And Amy always helps me think about this in terms of these moments of big passion or big intensity about something, right? And then that is part of the gift. A lot of the times we think about negative things that come down, but this book is really about the positives. I thought a lot about all of the entrepreneurs who came before me, and really the challenges they faced being an entrepreneur, so different than today's massive amount of resources that we have, to become an entrepreneur. So I love that. I love this topic. Okay.
Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards.
Yep. Yeah. I like that. That's a good way to think about it. You never know what you might find in moving backwards and looking backwards in those generations and what they did and how they did it. Okay, Katie, how about you? So share a moment in terms of that aha when you realized what was possible with ancestral healing.
It's multifaceted for me, because there's a realization, like I said, that our ancestors have all of these gifts and these strengths to share with us, but they also have this long lineage of traumas that they've been through. And when I had the download it was actually when I was with a client who has a South American lineage, and they came in really strongly, as they often do for some reason when I work with that culture. And they said, hey, we're not broken. We have gifts. We have things that she needs to know about. And when I sat with my own ancestry, there was a realization that every trauma experience that they had ever had, whether it was the Great Depression or some sort of business issue that they'd had where they'd lost everything that they had built, had created a sense of resiliency that I could tap into. And that to me is what trauma work is all about, right? When we can tap into the resiliency and the power that comes from that experience, and then take that gift that we experience from that trauma, that lesson, that knowing, and bring it forward and help other people and guide other people. To me, that's the biggest aha that you can get to with ancestral healing, and even with inner child work. There's so much potential there of how we can change the world when we take those things that have been difficult for us and we turn them into these roughly, mined diamonds that we can give to other people and shine the light for other people.
Mind diamonds. That's awesome. But I love hearing the potential in the traumatic events, and that's a reframe that also will help people just pause a moment, stop being so caught up in the feelings and emotions of the trauma itself, but realize, oh, this could be some possibility here.
Yeah, and that to me is, we've all been through trauma the last couple of years, and that's kind of leveled the playing field and even having this conversation. Mm-hmm. And I'm a deeply feeling empath. And so when you're experiencing all these things out in the world, it's really easy to get caught up in, oh my gosh, these terrible things are happening, these hard things are happening. But if you can reframe that within your own experience, within your ancestral line, within your inner child space, then you can much more easily reframe that when you're walking out in the world, right? And it's not about spiritually bypassing anything. It's just about realizing that everything can be a gift at some point. Maybe not in the moment, not in the middle of it, but everything can be a gift at some point.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I always like to remind people it's not about moving through things and not honoring the feelings first. Yeah. That is always first and foundational. But then with that bigger awareness, you've got a choice, and you can see the possibilities and the potential there, in that practice. That's really important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shelley, what was one of yours? You actually talked about one of them already, but I'm wondering what you'll say to this. What was one of your ahas?
Well, when I sat down well, to begin 2022, to let go of 2021, we kind of do the forward looking. What is it going to look like? I, had some meditation, some guided practice. And one word that came to me very strongly in a couple of different meditations was the word right. And I mentioned that to my friend Marcia, who's also an author in this book. And she said, well, they're looking for an author in this ancestry book. I'm like, well, I don't know that I really do ancestor work. But I sat down and I thought about it. And what came to me is the healing practice that I do, the Reiki practice. Since before I had my Reiki training and I first did, what I would call an intentional distance healing on somebody that I knew had been feeling sick, what came to me was sound, was singing or, kind of toning. And I have no idea where that came from because, I had the lesson when I was a little that, singing, especially singing with passion and just singing out what, is coming from inside was not a good thing to do. My dad ran in the house and he thought I had like hurt myself because I was, screaming so loudly or, wailing. And, so that kind of tamped it down. And then, that lesson was reinforced through time, when somebody would say, who sings this song? That's right. Let them sing it, and so the singing really did not come naturally to me, especially when I was doing it in front of other people. When I did, start doing actual healing work. And I realized, that is a connection with the ancestors, the healing, and also, the doing it with sound, feeling that movement, that energy through sound.
I love that. What a great way to illustrate that can be a connection of many, many, many different kinds. Singing, I wouldn't have thought of that, but sure, of course, right? Any of the gifts, I think any of the things that you're inspired by or excited to try even could be a little spark of that. I love that, Shelley. Okay, Dottie, it's hard to go last on these questions, I know, but tell us about one of your ahas when you realized what was possible.
I talked about it in my chapter, and I think the one that stood out as soon as you asked that question was to start my online business. I did a summit online and I was struggling. I knew I wanted to help people with or talk about anxiety and depression because it's something that is in my lineage and has been has had a big impact on my life personally. So I just couldn't figure out what I was going to do, how I was going to approach it. And I kept opening my Akashic records and asking for guidance. And finally, they said something along the lines of, your ancestors can help you with this. And it just was that moment. I was like, oh, wow, okay, yes. And then how, even though anxiety and depression has been, it's formed a lot of the way my family acts and the roles that we play and all that good stuff that every family can speak to. It helped me feel less alone in all of it, that my ancestors have probably gone through a lot of it too. And that there is resilience, again, to bring that point forward again, because that's such a beautiful point, that we can tap into that power of resilience and knowing that our ancestors made it through some pretty hard stuff and we can too.
Yes, that idea that you're not alone is so important. And this ancestral connection can be that for you, talking to all of our listeners. Again, be open to what's possible here. Really life-changing, profound kinds of ways you can shift. I always love to ask the question, what if you learned something that could change everything? And I know that our authors are saying some of those things today in this interview, and for sure they're in this book, you guys. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let me move on to, one of my favorite topics is the awareness piece. You are all gifting tools of awareness in different ways in all of your beautiful voices and stories and the ways that you're presenting your tools. And for me, feeling is healing. Feeling is the awareness practice. And so helping people feel is part of this for me, and helping people to feel again. You know, we were born feeling everything, and then somewhere along the line, we were taught not to feel anything. Some for protection, but also the shoulds and supposed tos. Again, I mentioned that earlier. So what I'd love, Katie, I'm starting with you for this one, is share one of the ways you practice that awareness. I know all of you have a pretty intense toolkit of lots of different ways, but for this one, just share one of those ways you practice.
Well, it's kind of like what Shelley said. The thing that came forward for me when I started working with my inner child, I've been a sound healer for probably 10 years now. And when I first started sound healing, it was all about using a tool. I have tuning forks right beside me all the time to help move the energy. But what my work entails now really is helping people use their voice to heal trauma. And so that awareness of being able to feel something as an emotion, as an empath in my body, knowing that there's maybe a pain in my neck and saying, okay, what is the emotion that's tied behind that pain? And then being able to go into my being and find a sound that I can express that energy out of my body through. And so whether I'm doing it on my own or doing it with a group of people, which is what I really love to do, then there's this possibility that through that vibratory feeling in the body, right? When we experience sound, we have a feeling in the body, that we can use that in the opposite direction to express those feelings and release things that maybe are being held. And so that's one of my favorite practices. But my other most favorite practice is to spend time being in connection to the earth. Because I really feel like she has the key codes and the information that we need in order to be able to drop into our deeply feeling body and to move forward as a collective on this planet and kind of continue to grow and evolve as we are working on right now.
I love both of those ways. We were talking about the sound healing yesterday and all of the different things. Specifically, we were talking about the Om. Are you a fan of the Om?
Absolutely.
Do you like all of them? Or yeah, okay, good.
Especially in a group setting, every time I start doing ohms with people, I actually lose my voice and start crying because I can feel the beautiful vibration that we're all harmonizing together. And, you know, we're all trying to figure out how to be in harmony, right? That's really what we came here to do, to be, to figure out, to understand within our own being. And so when we can come together in tone, then we have the potential to just experience that for just a moment, which is so powerful.
I hope if you're listening that you will try this. It is one of the most profound things I've ever tried, I've ever felt. I always feel like sound healing is washing me from the insides out, all forms of it. Any kind of way we could talk about this, but surely making your own sounds, especially if you've been taught to be seen and not heard, if that's part of your story, this can be so profound. Okay, Shelley, let's move to you. What's one of the ways you practice in your day-to-day?
Well, it's not every day, but it's you know, an intention every day, is taking the time, being present, being mindful, but, you know, doing the meditation. And that looks, you know, sometimes that looks differently. You know, sometimes it's meditating through, you know, listening to a guided meditation or practice. Like this morning, I did like a directional type of a routine based on a book that I read, and, you know, just taking the time to face the east and to let that awareness come in, and face the south, and, you know, feel the lessons that we've picked up along the way that might not be ours, you know, just kind of drift away. And then, you know, just continuing with that, facing the west, facing the north, and doing that 3 times. But, you know, it's just that entering into stillness so that we can hear voices that aren't that harsh inner critic in our head, or, you know, the the nagging of a parent or a spouse or, whatever that is, let's give spirit a chance to come in and talk to us.
Yes, also one of the most profound things to do in terms of an awareness practice. Get still, try it again, do more of it. Like try it again, right? Like, and so people who don't like the M word, the meditation word, just get still, because the more you practice and using the breath to just be in your body, right? So yes, thank you, Shelley, for another seriously profound path.
I think that's why, when we take showers, or if we're in the car, that's not if we take showers, but when we take showers, that's when we get a lot of the ahas, right? Because we're still and quiet, unless you're like me. Sometimes I take my phone in there because it's waterproof, but when you actually, take that time, I mean, just in a 5-minute shower, how many times have you gotten like a profound download or inspiration or idea? It's because you're still, you're taking that time of just quiet.
One of my authors in another project talked about a while ago, talked about the little waterproof board that you can write on in the shower, or the crayons that you can write on the shower wall with. I mean, everybody gets inspired and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to write this down. That's awesome. Yes, the shower, shower meditation and singing all together. Why not? Why don't we do all of it together? Dottie, how about you? Tell us about one of your practices.
I think one of the most beneficial practices is writing a page in my journal every morning, if not more, but it's usually a page, just to clear the cobwebs from my thinking space. I live in my head a lot. And I am I'm a thinker. My mind is very strong and it loves to give me all kinds of, stories. So journaling helps me level that out. And I'll echo what Katie said, going outside. I walk every day, and I live near Lake Erie, which is really wonderful and a beautiful blessing. And I go visit her every day for just that, horizon. That endless horizon gives me a whole different perspective.
Those are two of my top two go-tos for sure. The nature connection and the journaling. I'm a fan. It's a part of my miracle morning every morning to get something down on paper. Sometimes it's not a lot, and sometimes it's a full-on poem. That's the connection to the channel, which I, of course, I love. And I know Star's like, yes, let's get our quills out and do this.
Do it.
I'm inspired to try some calligraphy too, because of you, Star. So let's move to you. What's one of your practices?
One of my practices is walking outside barefoot and breathing. A lot of yoga, a lot of pranayama. And when I want to tune in to, for instance, doing a calligraphy project, it's sound, Gregorian chant. Those are all solfeggio tones, the really ancient ones. So those tones and that vibration can bring you into the right side of the brain. So you're not thinking it, you're feeling it. And from the feeling comes your best work.
Nice. Okay, now we can combine all of these together. As long as we can bring a notebook on our walk after the shower, we can sing and we can do actually, yes. I think a lot of the practices are combo practices for a lot of us. And I love every single thing that you guys brought to the table. And I know you have many more than the ones you mentioned. And I think that's part of why these books are so amazing, because they're going to give you 25 different ways to connect. You all are giving hope here in your perspectives and your awareness, your master tools, your amazing stories, because there are people, and if I'm talking to one of you right now who have tried 10 different things and not had any success in your healing journey, we are here to tell you there is one more thing. Keep searching, keep trying, keep connecting. Authors, thank you so much for what you do in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing us together. That's perhaps the greatest gift. This never would have happened without that.
Something much bigger than me has been driving this bus for the last few years. I'm so honored to be here with all of you and sharing your brave words in the world in a bigger way. And if for the listeners today, if something that one of these amazing authors said, you know, really ignited a spark or give you the goosebumps or inspired you, well, these experts are very generously here for you. Drop down into the show notes because I have you hooked up with their websites. Go explore. They are up to some amazing things in the world. Give it a click, see what they're up to, and get the support. Reach out. Amy has the Ancestors Within community on Facebook. Where do you get to rub elbows with authors, right? This is such a big gift. Come into the community. The link is down below for that as well. And you can ask questions, and you read one of these chapters and you might have a question about it, right? You can come in and ask your questions. I think that is so amazing. And of course, if you are listening to this and you're ready to join us to celebrate, we are going to have a live stream book launch party for the Ancestors Within on June 7th at 12 noon Eastern. We're going to be gathering with all of the Ancestors Within authors on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page. The link is below for you. If you're listening to this after that date, well, then that means you can go grab your copy of the book on Amazon. It is up and ready, and we can't wait for you to start this journey with us. Lastly, today, everybody, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. It's time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Thank you, authors.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.